This is a Tusken reader review of Star Wars Jedi Quest: The Dangerous Games, written by Jude Watson. The Dangerous Games, Book 3 in the Jedi Quest series, written by Jude Watson. This is a young reader series, but it doesn't feel that way. We'll get into more about that later, but this takes place 27 years before the Battle of Yavin. Anakin Skywalker is just 14 years old, so he's not a child, he's a young teenager. But let's get into what the publisher says about this book, the publisher's summary, and then I have a little thing I'd like to read to you from the Essential Reader's Companion that I thought was interesting. I just opened that up just a few minutes ago and saw this little note here, which was kind of interesting. Publisher says about this book, when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker are sent to the Galactic Games, they are meant to be keepers of the peace. Then they discover an illegal event that Anakin knows all too well: pod racing. Even though Obi-Wan forbids it, Anakin cannot resist the thrill of the race and the chance to face off against his childhood rival, the loathsome Sebulba. So for my thoughts on Jedi Quest Book 3, The Dangerous Games. I opened up this book taming my expectations, thinking, well, the first two were fantastic. Surely the third is going to feel like a kid's book, and maybe we're going to come crashing down, and the joyride will be over. I'm pleased to say that that's not the case. This book was awesome. Anakin, Kenobi, a couple other Jedi that we've met from the previous books show up on this planet, Euceron. They're going to be security at these games, and they just call it the Galactic Games. It's supposed to be a number of things, kind of like the Olympics that we have. Just people from all over the galaxy come together and they play these games. It's a really popular thing. It happens every 7 years. Planets are always like, oh, we want to host. And so it's taking place on this kind of a tyrannical government planet. So the Jedi are kind of like, I don't know why we're here, but I guess the Senate wants us to make sure that people are okay in this bad place. So Anakin, Kenobi, they get all these leads about these illegal activities that are going to be happening. When Anakin learns that there's going to be an illegal pod race, he's so happy. He can't contain himself. He has to get away from everybody to go find where the pod racers are meeting and get himself involved. And that's exactly what he does, and it's fantastic. This book, it's like a pod racing reunion, pretty much, and I loved it. I didn't think that I would need it. Jude Watson brings in some familiar characters from the past that we've seen in other books and in the film, which was The Phantom Menace. It was awesome. There's little lessons that Anakin has to learn throughout this book, as a Jedi. He's still young, he's still learning, and seeing Kenobi and Anakin go at it sometimes is just awesome. You get that, especially whenever Anakin knows that he's wrong and he's like, I'm sorry, Master. Like, he does humble himself sometimes, but he still has that pride that just keeps getting him in trouble. I opened up the Star Wars Reader's Companion from the Expanded Universe, written by Pablo Hidalgo, and I just wanted to see what he had to say about this book. And I found this little note here fascinating. The book states that Anakin has not raced since he was 8 years old, when in fact, he was 9 years old during the Bunta Eve pod race that saw his liberation. So that's an interesting little flaw in the book that I didn't catch. But he's 14 years old, still young. A lot of people, a lot of teenagers are not happy about life, or they think they know everything. Anakin Skywalker is one of those people that just thinks he knows everything, has to control his temper. There are some flaws that I did have with the story, such as the ending. It does feel a little abrupt. There's so much stuff that was happening throughout this book that did not get the closure, but maybe that's going to happen in the next book. But I don't know if that's going to be the case, because each of these feels very contained. It's one mission after another, a different mission. So I don't know that we're going to get any closure with all the other happenings from this story. But Jude Watson just continues to impress me with these young adult books. Or not young adult, just like children's books, scholastic young reader books. She makes them feel so adult, and like that's awesome, because in these books, they've got twists and turns. I highly recommend that you read these things. I mean, at least the first 3. We'll see how I feel about book 4. So, I recommend that you read it. I give this book an A-, which I think is the lowest of the 3 that I've read so far, just because of that abrupt ending. But that's it. I like this. I enjoy these children books. Oh, man.